All right, if I don't double click the mute unmute, then I don't remute what I unmuted. So we're good. If that makes any sense to you. Anyway, welcome all of those who have chosen to join us today. This is our first Charleston online TIM team meeting. We've done a series of these already. You'll see that we've got a few more to go yet to finish up the 10 meetings we always have in the fall and the spring. And hopefully we'll be able to get back together face to face in the spring. And we'll be able to do some networking, tabletops, those sorts of things like we usually do. So please mute your device right now if you've got that possibility, that capability, and use the chat feature if you have any questions, or you can see the email address there, network@sctimnetwork.com, if you have any questions. You'll see some other email contact addresses for the various presenters as we go through this as well, if you have questions related to the specific topics. Next slide, please. There we go. Okay. So we are the Parsons Corporation. We have the contract for the SHARP 2 traffic incident management program in the state of South Carolina, working in partnership with your South Carolina Department of Transportation. And that's why we are here today, to continue the program, the TIM team meetings. And this is one, as I mentioned earlier, one in a series. And these are just great opportunities for all the different disciplines to get together, do some networking, maybe raise issues that we might have had when we're out in the field. This is the place to discuss them and to sort some problems out. And that's why we have the TIM team meetings. So we have various agencies that'll participate today: law enforcement, fire, EMS, DOT, and others. All of them are important. All of them are part of all of the MVCs that we have out there on the roadways, and it's important. You'll see a list of the disciplines in just a minute. And today we're going to talk about, I'll go through some statistical stuff fairly briefly, and then I'll hand the microphone over to Kevin Smith from our Peachtree Corners office in the Atlanta area, and he will talk about distracted driving with public safety officers and how the consequences of that can really be bad. So he'll discuss that, and then the microphone get handed over to Jay Cox with DHEC. He's on the emergency response program. He'll talk about when DHEC should be called for hazmat incidents, what they can do, what they can't do, what you should expect from them, and what you shouldn't expect from them. Both those presentations have some excellent information. So we're looking forward to sharing all of this with our law enforcement, fire, and EMS partners, any of the SHEP people that have joined us today, tow and recovery, SCDOT, other DHEC people, and of course, coroners and deputy coroners, all important partners in traffic incident management programs. Next slide, please. We are working with quite a few agencies right now to reschedule or just schedule from scratch some SHARP 2 traffic incident management training. Of course, we shut down some virus or something that came around and got us all shut down in the middle of March. So there were a lot of classes that were postponed or outright canceled. We fired back up the 1st of June. We do practice social distancing, face masking. I do carry a remote touchless thermometer with me. So we do all the stuff we're supposed to do when we have these classes, but we've had some really good ones. It fired back up and spiked a little bit, not the virus, the classes. After the 1st of June, we had quite a few of them. It's dropped off a little bit now, but we're working on some more scheduling. And any of your agencies that need or wish to have the training, please get in touch with me. Let's schedule this. All that's required is a minimum of 15 participants and all disciplines be invited. I have to emphasize that if you are going to attend a class or one of these meetings, you need to go to sctimnetwork.com and register. It's the only way we can tell whether we have enough people. And in the case where we don't have enough, that's the only way we can get hold of people and let them know, don't drive to the meeting or the class because it has been postponed or canceled. We hate it when people show up and they go, I thought there was a class here. They didn't register and we weren't able to get a hold of them. So make sure that you do register for any Sharp 2 training or any TIM meetings that we have on the schedule. Next slide. And you can see this morning we did the Rock Hill region. Now we're doing the Charleston region. Midlands tomorrow morning, Florence tomorrow afternoon. Take a couple of weeks off because I don't know. I think next Tuesday there's some or something. I don't know. And then November 10th back for Jasper I-95 in the morning and Aiken region in the afternoon, and wrap up the 10 meetings with Orangeburg on the 12th in the morning. And again, if you've got someone who wasn't able to participate in this meeting, it will be recorded. It will be available on our website after the meeting, or they can register for any of these other meetings that are on the schedule, and they'll get pretty information other than local statistics from those meetings. So we again emphasize sctimnetwork.com to register for any of these meetings. Next slide, please. In the radio business, we used to call that a pregnant pause. You've got dead air time and you're waiting for something to happen, but that's okay. We'll get through this. Okay, in-person and web training. You can see the numbers there, and this was as of October 5th. Now, we had numbers issued, I think, a day or two ago that we can update a little bit, but as of the 5th, we were looking at 7,344 people trained in person in our state, 944 on the web. Now, just to tell you that these classes, when you're in person, not on the web, but in person, as of about 2 years ago, you will receive 3.5 hours for law enforcement recertification. You will get Fire Academy transcript. So it'll show up, your training will show up on your transcript at the Fire Academy. And in person or web, if you're EMS National Registry, you can get 4 hours. It's federal DOT and CAPC certified for 4 hours recertification towards your national registry. Law enforcement and Fire Academy, that's got to be done in person with us in the state. And again, if you took it longer than 2 years ago, that was not available then. It's something we kicked in a couple of years ago, as I just said, around May of 2018. So if you'd like to sit through it again and get those hours for a refresher, please do so. Next slide, please. We set a goal this year of 60%. We were going to blow the lid off of that until, again, something happened and we all shut down the middle of March. We've still made it to effective a couple of days ago where we ticked up 1/10 of a point. So we're at 59.3%. And we're hoping we got a couple more classes right now scheduled before the end of the year. We hope we get a couple more. And we'd really like to hit that 60%. Now, you say 60%, well, that's great. Depends on whether you're a glass half full or half empty kind of person, because 60% means 40% of our responders in this state still have not gone through the training. And it doesn't matter if you're a rookie officer or the police chief or a sheriff, or you're a brand new firefighter or a battalion chief or the fire chief or whoever you work for. And I have to emphasize tow operators as well. Very, very important. If there's a possibility of any of these people, EMS included, and we know EMS stops at motor vehicle collisions. If there's a possibility of anybody stopping to assist at a motor vehicle collision, it's important we are all informed and playing off the same sheet of music. That's how critical this training is. So we encourage all of you, if you've taken it, please pass the word along and get your people through this program. Very, very important. Next slide, please. So here are some local Charleston, Berkeley, Dorchester County statistics as of the 18th. We get a couple times a month, we get some updates from DPS that get passed through to us on local fatality statistics. You can see the deadliest counties, and unfortunately, there's a couple of them on the bottom of the list there, the upstate and the coast. Greenville County is the worst right now, 61. Spartanburg comes in at second, tied with Horry County at 46. And then down your way, Berkeley and Charleston County both tied at 45. Next slide, please. Now, we have had an update from this year-to-date statewide fatalities. The update came through, let's see, on the 19th, 18th, perhaps. Anyway, so we've got a lot more, or these figures are based on the 18th, the 799. The update we had was yesterday, and believe it or not, we have started to really see an uptick in our fatalities. But let's back up for a second. 799, those were the numbers on the 18th of this month. Charleston County was sitting at 45. So 45 then, last year at this time, 63, 2018, 48. And 2017 at this time, Charleston was at the top of the list. It was the deadliest county, tied with Greenville at 56. So 45, I mean, one fatality is one too many, but there has been a reduction. So that's big, that's good. As long as we keep seeing reductions, we'd like to get down to 0 at some point in time. Berkeley, you can see, is at 45. Dorchester sitting at 20. Berkeley's at 45. Where were they? They were 26 this time last year. So a big difference. And then 28 the year before and 26 the year before. So they've that's climbed up a little bit. So, but anyway, for right now, 799 as of the 18th, 13, almost 14% of the fatalities, roadway fatalities in our state are in those 3 counties. Now let's go back to current figures, and I don't have the county counts, but I can tell you that last year at this time we had 760 fatal crashes. This year we've had 752, so we're actually down 8 fatal crashes. However, fatalities in these crashes last year, 823. Fatalities this year to yesterday, 838. So although the crashes are down, we are up 15 fatalities this year over last year. So that's pretty critical. And you know, no one department, no one agency to blame on this. It's just a lot of people driving crazy. We know that. I mean, I travel thousands of miles a month, and I'm out there with them, and it gets pretty scary sometimes. You set your cruise control at 2 or 3 or 4 over the speed limit, and it's almost dangerous. You're going so slow on the roadways. Wish we had double the number of state troopers we've got on the road. I mean that sincerely. A lot more visibility and some more enforcement, I think, would make a difference. But don't know that that's going to happen soon. But anyway, so we've climbed from 799 all the way up to 838. That's pretty significant. Next slide, please. You're going to now see a presentation from Kevin Smith. He's a field project manager with Parsons, and he has some really good information that a lot of us can relate to in regards to public safety driving and distracted driving. I'm going to hand the microphone over to you, sir.
Okay, appreciate that, Jeff. Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Smith. I'm a retired law enforcement officer from Georgia. I had 29 years law enforcement, 5 years EMS before that. And I retired as a lieutenant, as a watch commander and assistant SWAT team commander. I am passionate about traffic incident management and responder safety. And I do that the best thing that responders can do to improve the safety of you on the roadway is to get out of the roadway as quickly as possible. I think it's the simplest, easiest thing we can do. Push, pull, drag, drive, whatever we got to do to get that roadway back open, and so that we can do our work on the shoulder, and or if it's on the interstate, even if we can move it to an exit ramp, makes it even more safe. We're going to be talking about distracted driving today. Next slide, please. Distracted driving, we see it every day on the roadway, whether talking on the cell phone, putting on makeup, shaving, writing, taking notes, texting, or eating. We see citizens do this on the roadway every day. And we think, man, what do they do? Well, we are citizens also. And our office, just like many of these citizens out there, these motorists, our office is our vehicle. So we end up doing a lot of this ourselves every day. Next slide, please. Is this a common occurrence in your vehicle? For fire and EMS, it's not so much, because your right seater in the fire apparatus or the passenger, the technician of the two medics in the ambulance, may be running the laptop and handling the radios while the other one drives. But for law enforcement, we're the only one in the car typically. So it's up to us to check the updates, make sure we're going to the right address, and do all that on the laptop. Next slide, please. We may be, as public safety officers, we may be legally exempt from the distracted driving laws, but we are not immune to the physics of it, and we're not immune to the psychology. You know, as agencies have become more reliant on computers to push out lookouts, information on calls, et cetera, sometimes officers are told the info is in the call when they ask for it over the radio. One of the easiest things we can do is use old school technology such as the radio. We don't need to be looking at that laptop while we're driving, especially if we're driving code. It's estimated that more than 30% of public safety crashes involve distracted driving. NHTSA estimates that 94% of crashes involve distracted driving of one form or another. And we've just talked about some of the different variations of distracted driving. But it doesn't have to be that cell phone. It could be any activity that takes your attention away from paying attention to the roadway. For public safety, the laptop and the phone are the primary offenders. And because the laptop is that primary method of information delivery, people want to look at that and go, well, you got the call right there. Again, if you're driving, you don't need to be focusing on that laptop. Next slide, please. This is a graphic from the National Safety Council that shows how drivers using cell phones or talking on a cell phone can see just a fraction of their driving environment. Studies have shown that audio stimuli takes precedence over visual stimuli in the human brain. When we attempt to multitask or pay attention to more than one thing, our visual range decreases. The eyes still pick up the information and send it to the brain, but the brain can only handle so much information at a time. So when it comes between visual information and audible information, that audible information will take precedence, so that what you see out of the windshield isn't seen. Your brain doesn't process as much of it. You can see on the left an undistracted driver what they see out of their front windshield, and on the right, a driver carrying on a conversation or being distracted sees maybe 40% of that. So 60% of what that driver should be seeing, they're not seeing and they're not registering. This may be go back to prehistoric days when it was more important for people to hear that saber-toothed tiger in the woods than see it. By the time the person saw it, it was probably too late for that person. So you say, well, I do hands-free. I use hands-free use. So I'm much more attuned. Well, the problem is back when National Institutes of Health and NHTSA and National Insurance Institute and all these people started doing studies on driver safety, they used to test hands-free and handheld phones. But after about 10 years of testing, they saw no statistical difference between handheld and hands-free use, and have stopped, probably 10, 12 years ago, have stopped testing both ways Now they just test it. It doesn't matter if the person holds it in their hand or if they are hands-free at the time. It could even be a conversation from a person sitting in the car next to you. That audio stimulation, that audible stimuli will take precedence over your visual stimulation. Okay, the next video we're going to see is of a bicyclist who had a helmet cam on. Next slide, please. You can see he pulls up and he's looking both ways, and when he looks to the right, you're going to see a squad car that's coming at him. Well, that squad car comes through and actually hits the bicyclist. What you're not hearing on the audio right now is that the bicyclist started yelling like anybody would do that's about to get hit, is starting to yell, "Hey, hey, hey." And after he gets hit and the officer's opening his door, he's telling the officer, he says, "Officer, you were on your phone. What were you doing?" The officer was driving down the road just like any other citizen and was more engrossed in his cell phone than he was on what he was doing. He went to make his turn, never saw the bicyclist who pulled up and had been sitting there for 10 seconds by the time the police officer made the turn. So he'd been sitting there for 10 seconds as that police officer approached the intersection and then went to make his turn and never saw him. Now, you may say, well, one of the things that we talk about with motorcyclists and bicyclists is people only see what they expect to see. They don't expect to see a bicyclist sitting there. Well, other than the fact that the bicyclist was in front of the stop bar, the bicyclist has every right to be there just like a car does. So we have to be paying attention to our roadway. If you'll go to the next video, please.
He's constantly warned us about the dangers of driving.
But a 41 Action News investigation can some officers investigator Ryan Katz shows the consequences of what happens when an officer's attention wanders from the road.
This photo was taken the day sisters Jessica and Kelly lost their lives.
No, but that sure that was your last moment. I really hope that they didn't know.
It was the day after Thanksgiving in 2007. Schlau remembers seeing the coroner walk up to her house.
I didn't want to open the door because if I opened that door, it became real. You know, until I opened that door, I still had 3 daughters.
Jessica and Kelly died in a horrific head-on collision with an Illinois state trooper.
He literally drove through the top of their car.
The trooper was responding to a car crash in the St. Louis area. Court records show he was driving 126 miles per hour, talking to his girlfriend on a cell phone, and emailing for directions on his computer when he lost control of the car.
On so many levels, this crash was preventable.
An extreme and tragic example. We found video of other crashes that never made headlines. Watch as this Missouri state trooper driving 60 while looking at his computer drifts off the road and then loses control. 41 Action News investigators looked through 40 crash reports in Missouri, all with a common cause: distracted driving by law enforcement.
Watch out. And that's when he hit.
Bob Dyer was driving on this Independence Road last August when he slowed down to take a right-hand turn. The police officer driving behind him never even hit the brakes. Bob's head smashed the back window of his truck.
He says, "I'm so sorry. I'm looking at my computer."
We read similar stories all over the state. Officers getting into wrecks because of distraction.
And just listen to the close call a sheriff's deputy had last year. He was on the phone and approaching a railroad crossing in rural Johnson County, Missouri. He says he didn't see or hear the train coming until the very last second when he slammed on the brakes.
The train collided with the bumper on the deputy's car and actually spun it around so it was parallel with the train tracks. That deputy just a couple feet away from losing his life. We found distraction is cited as the main cause in an average of 3 police crashes every month.
Yeah, it's very easy to get distracted.
Sergeant Andy Coates, a state patrol veteran of 17 years, admits there's a lot competing for his attention these days.
Black Ford Fords.
Along with the radio, There are lights and sirens, radar technology, and most of all, the laptop sitting right next to the wheel.
Officers are wrecking squad cars all over the country because they're distracted, because they're focused on something else.
It's such a problem that Keith Wenzel, a longtime sergeant with the Dallas Police Department, now leads a crash course in distracted driving, from fender benders to serious wrecks. His message to officers: can't divide your focus between computers and the road.
They get complacent in what you do and realize, well, I can do all these things and still maintain control of my vehicle. And the reality is, man.
So what we see is just like that state trooper said, is no matter how good of a driver we think we are, we can't do it all. We need to focus on what we need to focus on. If you'll skip the next video and go to the last video, please. Nope, back up one. Here's what happened when an officer is paying more attention to their laptop than they are the traffic in front of them. That was from my agency. Officer was driving, not paying attention, and totaled a brand new Cadillac. Fortunately, the woman driving the Cadillac wasn't seriously injured, and the city did have to pay off her claims, but nobody was seriously injured. And at the end of the day, the reason why we got into public safety is to help people, not to hurt people. Some suggestions to prevent a crash from distracted driving for first responders: use the radio. It's old school technology, but at the same time, it will get you the information you need. Close that laptop lid when you're driving to make it less appealing to look at. Close it and spin it around away from you if you can. There is technology out there that is GPS based, that when the vehicle is moving more than 5 or whatever threshold, 5 miles an hour, whatever threshold you set it at, that it will either blank the screen so you can't see anything on the laptop, or it will lock the laptop so that you can't control it or send any messages or do anything other than just see what's on that one screen. So if you have your call for service up and you need to glance at it at a red light to get the address or so forth, you still have it. At the end of the day, if you must use the laptop, pull over to the side of the road. You're not doing anyone any favors if you cause a crash on the way to your call. One of the things that I used to do, my vehicle as a watch commander, I didn't have a long gun rack in the cab of the vehicle with me. I had a gun vault in the back. So when we had a priority call with a person's armed, instead of going to the scene and then parking and then trying to get my long gun out, I would pull off the road, pull into a parking lot, go get my long gun, bring it up front with me, then respond to the scene so that when I got there, I was prepared. Get the information you need off of that laptop while you're not driving, and then get there so that you're prepared when you arrive. Next slide. Couple of major first responder safety events or first responder mobilizations. One of them is the National Traffic Incident Responder Awareness Week. It is, I believe, the second week of November. It's all about responder safety, move over law, and trying to focus on quick clearance to get you out of the road. You can go to Federal Highway website or to the NHTSA website for information about that. Another big one in December is the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over enforcement mobilization, which will happen nationwide between December 16th and January 1st. You can go to trafficsafetymarketing.gov, which has all the information on all the safety events throughout the year. You can also go to NHTSA.gov, which is one of the primary federal agency sponsors of the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over event. Next slide, please. If you have any questions or comments, you can post them into the Q&A or the chat area of the Cisco WebEx events. If not, you can reach out to Jeff Allen, or you can reach me at my email, which is Kevin, KEVN .r.smith@parsons.com, or you can reach out to Jeff Allen with any questions you have. If Jeff doesn't know the answer, or if I don't know the answer, we'll find someone who does and make sure we get you the right information. Hopefully you've been able to learn something from today's presentation, and have a great day.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. Good information that very important for all of us. Next on the program here, we got some really good stuff here from Jay Cox. As you can see, he's an environmental health manager out of the coastal area with South Carolina DHEC, and he's a member of the response teams. When we have hazmat incidents, we have to get DHEC in and have them kind of have a look at what's going on and give us some expert advice on what we need to do. So Jay's going to cover all that stuff for us. And sir, I hand the microphone over to you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Just want to make sure I can be heard.
You're good.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'm Jay Cox. I'm with the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. I'm in the, excuse me, I'm in the Myrtle Beach office. I'm currently the environmental response coordinator for our area, which includes Horry, Williamsburg, and Georgetown counties. And so this presentation we put together is basically meant to provide some introductory general information on our DHEC environmental response when we have a reported release or a spill. And of course, each county and region in the state is going to have slightly different resource capabilities available to them, and so we take all that into account. Next slide. So initial notifications come into our Division of Environmental Response. We manage a 24-hour reporting line, and chemical releases, oil and fuel spill incidents, and notifications can be made toll free using 1-888-481-0125. And usually when we have a call come in, whether it's through emergency management or 911, we do try to ask for a contact of that first responder that may be on scene, fire department, highway patrol. And so we can kind of contact them and cover some information that we'll have coming up in some of the next slides. So next slide, please. So we get a call, and usually the closest regional on-scene coordinator will be dispatched, and that's if it's in my area, that's going to be me when I'm on my own call week, which is actually this week that I'm in right now. And I've had 3 calls Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And so we'll be dispatched to make an initial assessment and start some kind of gathering of information on how a response needs to be done. If we feel that we need any additional resources, we'll reach back into our central office, and through our central office duty officer, there might be some staffing that we need some assistance with, or other resources. Next slide. So DHEC responsibilities en route to the scene. To go kind of along with when we get that initial call from 911 or something, we want to get that contact information for that incident commander or law enforcement officer that's there. And we'll also provide our number if they need to contact us. And so we're going to be giving them information on what our expected ETA is, and at the same time trying to coordinate some contact with the responsible party to begin to make some attempts on what they're going to do for cleanup and dealing with the material that may have contaminated an area. Next slide, please. So responsibilities on the scene. Once we're there, we're basically looking at the responsible party, making sure that they have controlled the spill release at the source. It might be a tanker truck that has punctured a storage tank, and what activities they're doing to get that controlled. Any release that's hit pavement or soil, what they're doing to contain it so it doesn't get into ditches or stormwater or ponds, and any methods that they are going to be used to do an effective and efficient cleanup and do it appropriately. Next slide. Additional information, what time did the incident occur, what kind of materials were released, what kind of quantities are we dealing with, any known hazards, any safety data sheets that may be available, manifest and shipping papers, if we've got 18-wheelers and tractor trailers involved. Do we have a responsible party that's on site? And do they have a contractor that is currently en route? And basically, I cover just about all of those questions on every single call. And so, like I say again, I've had 3 calls this week, and I've covered just about every one of those. Next slide. Additional information to gather. Again, identify the extent, volume, impacted areas, areas that could potentially be impacted if the release is not controlled effectively to begin with. If the RP is on site, we're going to start to gather their company information, addresses, phone numbers, their safety and environmental contacts. The insurance company part is a lot of times their insurance company is the one that kind of requests the third-party contractor, and so we'll be trying to get that information as well. We'll also be relaying details to that RP as far as what's been impacted because of the spill or the release, and kind of relaying that information to them so they can make an informed decision on what kind of response they can bring to bear. Next slide. So a responsible party is not at the scene. Again, we're going to use the technology and the information we have available to us. Highway Patrol will coordinate with them, and any license tag information, DOT information that's available on the truck, any apps that we can use on our phone to help us identify some information. And we can take that also and reach back to our central office and kind of say, here's the information I got. Can you kind of do some research and find out if we can track down who a responsible party is? Next slide. So responsibilities for cleanup, that's going to fall to the responsible party, the owner of the trucking company, facility that the release occurred at. And we're going to be looking at that they have a method of proper cleanup and disposal of the waste, and it's disposed of in a proper facility. So if it's hazardous, can that facility where they're looking at taking the material to can handle it properly? We're going to kind of verify that information with any shipping papers and manifests, and also if we need to go to that final disposal facility and ensure that it was taken there. That's part of the identifying receptors. That's where we're looking at any possibility of the release getting into creeks, waterways, ponds, what soil has been affected, what utilities may be impacted, and we'll follow up on any of that for any soil remediation that may be needed, and making sure that that contractor is doing what they need to do it properly. Next slide. What we kind of not responsible for or calling for an evacuation, traffic control, that's basically our highway patrol or whoever the law enforcement that is there at the time. Sometimes that's our incident commander or fire chief. Medical services, again, is handled by our ambulance and EMT personnel. Public safety is usually our fire department, fire marshal. If there's power that needs to be cut somewhere to ensure safety, we'll, if the power needs to turn back on, that a lot of times we get asked that if the power can be turned back on, we have to kind of defer that to the public safety, and that'll be the fire marshal or somebody similar. Roadside cleanup is going to be handled by that third-party contractor that's been hired by the responsible party, and they'll coordinate that cleanup. If they need to do any kind of traffic control, they'll need to contact either highway patrol or a DOT or a county, whoever's kind of responsible for that roadway. Next slide. So we'll just give some examples of what a first responder arriving on a scene may see, where they may say, okay, I need to contact DHEC because we don't really know what's going on here. We need some advice on what's in these barrels or something. So next slide. And so we have a tractor trailer accident, and barrels are spread out everywhere. We're going to probably get a call to kind of identify what may be in the barrels. Is it hazardous, non-hazardous? How does proper cleanup need to be done? Can water be applied? Is there a fire hazard? Is there an air hazard, inhalation hazard of any kind? And so that's typically where we're coming in to provide that information to the first responder to help them with how they can properly respond to it. Next slide. And what we see probably a lot of more than anything is fuel releases. And so we'll on to the next slide. And so again, you have a tractor trailer type incident. We usually have large saddle tanks. We have larger engines. We have hydraulic fluids, engine oils, and we're looking at if there's been a fuel release from a saddle tank, you know, what is being impacted: soil, pavement, concrete. Are the stormwater drains going to a retention pond? Are they going straight to a creek? And so we're taking all that into account when we're arriving at the scene to kind of identify what kind of response needs to be made by that responsible party. Next slide. And that's typically what we see the most of, is something similar to this, a punctured saddle tank due to an accident of some kind. And some of the important information is where the puncture occurred. Did it happen at the very bottom of the tank and release everything that's in the tank? When was the last time the vehicle may have been filled up? How much fuel do we believe was in there? What size were the tanks? And that way we kind of estimate, you know, what kind of remediation might need to be done or further cleanup. Next slide. And many times we don't know all of that until the vehicle's been pulled out of the wreck area. And then we can kind of get an assessment of how much soil may have been impacted, how much of the roadway may have been impacted, and what kind of methods may be used to effectively remediate that area. Next slide. And so responses, fuel on the road, on the side of the road, in a right of way, something like that. On the road, we can use, or there has been used, sand, dirt, oil dry, and depending on the amount that's been released, and all those will be used to try and effectively remediate the area. Next slide. Any off of the road areas that's been impacted. Again, we're looking at the amount. If there's free product, there's actual puddles of fuel and things like that in the soil on the side. May have a vac truck or something like that come in to remove that, and then do kind of soil remediation after that's been done. And so that gets into looking at right-of-ways and utilities at that point to effectively clean that up and not impact other utilities. Next slide. And road impacts, a lot of times the DOT has the ability to put some sand down. It works pretty good for kind of containing some fuel releases. And we've had some pretty good results with DOT putting out sand. And normally DOT will not pick that back up. And so that will be a responsibility of that third-party contractor to effectively clean up that sand or whatever's been put down to try and contain that fuel. And sometimes there's a lot of fuel that's been released. Sometimes it's very little. And sometimes the sand that's been applied will effectively mitigate it. And sometimes we'll have to kind of leave it in place. We sometimes cannot remove every bit of fuel that's been released onto a asphalt type area. And so we can look at some natural attenuation of the fuel, and some evaporation will help with that as well. Next slide. So RP responsibilities include stuff like notifications to any state or required entities, National Response Center, U.S. Coast Guard, and any county or emergency management officials. And I talked to a lot of those people on the week that I'm on call. I've talked to Coast Guard this week, and I've talked to county, and I've talked to Highway Patrol. They are also responsible for spill containment, so that's putting out booms or any absorbent measures to keep it out of any kind of ditches or storm drains to the best of their ability. And then, in same respect, getting those cleaned back up and removed and taken to a proper disposal. And then again, ensuring that disposal was taken to the correct place where it needed to be, have a final destination. And that information is usually provided back to that ERT personnel, such as me. If I handle that call, then that contractor is typically going to correspond with me on getting all that information back in an email form or text. We try to use as much technology as we can. And next slide. And so any kind of general questions, our main line to our environmental response section would be 803-898-3432. Any releases or spills can be reported, again, 24 hours a day at 1-888-481-0125. And our hope is that, once this kind of moves to face-to-face type meetings again, we hope to be able to have the ERT personnel that kind of works your area or region present this, and to be able to give those specific things that apply to your county or your region, and give them a chance to meet some of those first responders that are there that they may deal with and see on an incident that they get called to. And so thank you for the ability and the opportunity to present. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Good stuff. Really appreciate you participating in these. Both Kevin and Jay sharing some really important information with us. It's nice to have that kind of opportunity to spend some time with both of you guys and get some good stuff that may help us down the road. You can follow us facebook.com/SCTIM Network or twitter.com/SCTIM Network. And of course, the lower right, sctimnetwork.com. If there is a training session or a meeting that you'd like to participate in, you pull that website up and go on the calendar, and you can click on and register for anything that's coming up on that calendar. So the key is we need to get together. We need to be networking. We've cut this back to a group of meetings in the spring and a group in the fall. We used to do these quarterly, and I know we've got a lot of meetings. Everybody's got meetings out there, and you usually have a meeting to solve a problem. Unfortunately, when you start having too many meetings, they become the problem. So we decided to cut back a little bit and do a spring and a fall. And the key is to get all of you and the right people out here in these meetings so that we can network and get to know each other and work together when we're out on these scenes and be safe. The key to all of this is safety. My partner in crime is Ray Parker, a 30-year retired South Carolina trooper. He's now SCDOT TIM coordinator. You can see Ray's email and phone number on there, and then you've got my contact information, email and phone number. Thank you very much to all of those who have participated in this meeting, and we hope the time was well spent for you. And if you have any questions, please get in touch with us. Anything we can help you with along the lines of traffic incident management, that's what we're here for. So be careful, be safe. We want to talk to you, not about you. Bye for now.